Welcome back. Today we do a quick one on the FiiO FD15. So I think this is my first FiiO IEM that I've actually heard, and I've certainly read lots of impressions, lots of reviews on previous sets, and they've had a loyal fan base for a long time, and have been kind of cranking out some really nice IEMs for a while. So I do want to thank Apos Audio for loaning me this one and the opportunity to finally hear my first one, and I finally understand what people have been, really liking about their sets for quite a while. So here's the FD15. It does come with a nice modular cable. If you've looked at FiiOs in the past, you know that they do quite nice cables. This one is modular. You can't really tell, but it's actually the screw-in modular. So really nice cable. You do get their Lego case, and I think they had a name for it, but it's a little drawer, so you pop that out. You get your modulars in there, your tips are in there. So that's pretty cool. It was kind of unexpected. I remember seeing it when it was released. I'm like, yeah, that's a kind of an interesting idea, but it's kind of cool to hold it. So this is what it looks like up close, and this is the black version. So it's not going to be all that photogenic compared to the silver version. It's going to look like kind of a black blob, but it's a weighty metal shell, probably very similar to other FiiO shells that you may have held in the past. It's got a really nice build to it, really nice metal, solid build to it. So not all that surprising. So what was surprising to me, I think this one is a 13.8 millimeter. They call it a magnesium aluminum alloy dome, and with DLC suspension. So really nice dynamic driver. At least has some really nice marketing words around it. But when we look at how it was tuned, it's actually a very nice, and I'll say it right there, this one's an easy rec simply because it's the perfect alignment of driver capability, tuning, and price. So at about $149, tuned like this, kind of a mid-centric, lowered sub bass, lowered ear gain, very, very nicely tuned, and then a driver that can actually match this style tuning and deliver a really, really nice sound. And I think this one was surprisingly good. I was kind of shocked about how good it actually is. And I don't praise that many single dynamic drivers over at least $100, because over $100 they tend to be okay, but nothing that you would necessarily need to spend $100 or $200. When you get into the $200 level, I think those tend to separate themselves from the 100s. So I sort of like the idea that they picked 149. It's better than, and it's certainly more unique than lots of sets that are under $100, but probably not quite at the technical level of the 200 guys, the Falcon Ultras and the Oxygens. It's not quite that technical, but yeah, I actually do love the tuning. I love that it is a big dynamic driver. This one has really strong magnets in it that will attract each other even with metal shells. So yeah, I do think this one's kind of an easy rec in that respect. And as I said, look on the graph, and we'll talk about this for a second. So for those of you who are into Harman style bass curves, this one does not have this overabundance of sub bass. This is a nice gentle arc, so you get a nice combination of sub bass and mid bass. The ear gain is lowered, quite a bit lower than Harman, which is up there. This is a lowered Harman, and when you lower kind of the bass, the sub bass, and lower the ear gain at the same time, it tends to pop the mids forward, and I guess it's almost contrary to what people believe is supposed to happen. Lots of Harman tuning, they pop up the sub bass here, and then they pop this so the mids are forward. But if you bring both down, it essentially has the same effect without all this overabundance of energy. And so I very much like this style graph. I love sets that have this nice arcing bass shelf. I love ones that do lowered ear gain, and I love ones that kind of pop the mids forward in that way by revealing the mids, as opposed to trying to boost them forward, which is how most of Harman sets do. So easy rec. Secondly, mid-centric with extension on both ends. There aren't many sets that have a mid-centric tuning, and less that have a driver capable of the tuning. So as I said, this is a rare combination of a very, very nice driver and a tuning that is very kind of matched to what the driver can do. Both of those things are kind of rare to find, and especially even rarer to find at $149. So the sound on this one, mids are front and center. The bass and treble sit just under, but they're not lacking at all. This is what's called revealing the mids rather than popping them forward, like I just said. It's really different from U-shaped Harman mids. For those of you who are really used to kind of popping the mids forward to get over the sub bass, popping the upper treble to get over the sub bass, that is not this style. This is kind of you bring down both sides and reveal what's in the middle. That's exactly what happens. The tuning does require some volume. and a very resolving source. There's no treble blasted forced detail, so you do need a little bit more volume. And it's just, again, it's just kind of a different style. A lot of people are used to this treble blasted forced detail, really popping this forward to bring out all the detail, and that's not the way this one does. It reveals what your source can do or not do. So a warm source won't be a great match. If you have a resolving, barely warm source, that will take some edge off of the tracks. And I think we think of bright sets as being unforgiving, but you can get a similar thing on a mid-centric. You can almost have too much mids. You get all the mids, and that can be a little bit, I don't know, overwhelming, unforgiving in a way. So having a slightly barely warm source will take a little bit of that edge if you're not used to all the mids. The bass on this one, again, I do love this long arc style. So you get some sub bass and you get some mid bass. It's a nice ratio. It is a full bass style with control that is missing on most U-shaped sets. Don't underestimate what 5 dB of sub bass extension and mid bass when you have lowered treble level. It will thump and rumble, but not over the mids. So again, I talk about these slight bass boosts and what they sound like in ear when you lower the treble. Most of the time we're talking about a Harman style set and you've got like 10 dB of treble up here. You're always boosting the bass to balance this, but when you bring both of them down, this looks like it's, a rolled off treble or a rolled off bass. I mean, not a lot of bass, but it's sort of the opposite. When you lower this down, this becomes more present in your ear, and it's a fuller style bass set. And it's just, again, I love this tuning, this bass style. All these things work together the way they should. So don't underestimate just looking at it. It looks quite flat, and it's not going to be bassy, but it actually is. And again, this is the third part of the rec on this one is I do think that FiiO vented quite a bit of bass for level control and air. This is a reminder of what small bass boosts can do for full mids. Again, if you aren't used to hearing what a full mid sounds, like, if you're so used to these big U-shaped sets where they just bump the sub bass and then hope some of that brings into a fuller mid, and it typically doesn't. You end up with a tuck right here, and that tends to lean out the mid. So when you have both a sub bass and a mid bass into your mids, you end up with a fuller style mid. It's a really more natural style, fuller style, richer style mid, and this one is done quite well. So the mids, again, like I was just talking about, it is the star here. It's all the mids, which is not as common as you would suspect. The U-shaped Harman sets are typically upper emphasis, and this is closer to linear mids. With the bass control, you get those clean mids necessary for this tuning. You get the contrast, you get the separation, you get the layering. Again, in this style where you've lowered the treble and you've lowered the bass level, and you sort of rely on the mids being revealed as opposed to being boosted, you do need a very clean bass shelf. You do need a nice clean background. You can't have a whole lot of sub bass because you're not boosting anything out here. So again, this revealing style mids is slightly different than what you're probably used to, but all of these tuning choices are very intentional to bring out the best of the mids, and that's exactly what really happens here. So the tuning is very revealing, and you'll realize why it's priced also at $150. So like I said, this one is technically good. It is a 13.8 millimeter dynamic driver. Technically, it's actually quite good. Technically, it belongs about $150. When you get into those $200 dynamic drivers, some of the Falcon Ultras, the Oxygens, I think those tend to be more resolving, higher resolution, more capable dynamic drivers. So I do think that FiiO priced this one pretty much dead on. I think $150 is quite fair, especially considering the cable and the accessories and the build. I think all of that just, they really nailed the price on this one quite well. And the treble, again, this one is a mid-centric level balance, so it never oversteps. It doesn't sound bright or sibilant. This was the trade-off and why you need a really resolving source. There's no real added treble force detail compensation. So again, like I was just talking about, so not a whole lot of sub bass. You don't have a big treble boost, but what is there, it really needs to be very resolving coming from your source, because there's no boost here. There's no 5K boost. There's no upper air boost. Those things typically give you more apparent detail. Even in those work quite well with non-resolving sources. You're just kind of boosting them in place. When you don't have the boost, you're really listening to what the source can do, and you do need a more resolving source so you can hear everything as it should be. But I do think that one of the parts of the mid-centric tuning that appeals to me is the seamless transitions. It's more headphones than 2024 U-shaped IEMs. The lower ear gain is there for compensation, not emphasis. It's a really subtle difference. And again, we'll talk about this area right here. So lots of Harman sets really boost this way up there at about 10 dB. And when you lower this ear gain, and it tends to be sort of mids into treble seamless, you don't have this big bump here. That's kind of the way headphones do it. They don't really need the ear gain compensation. We need it on in-ears because we're bypassing the outer ear. So IMs tend to boost this a little bit, but when you kind of bring this down to a more natural level, it sounds quite a bit different. It sounds closer to headphones than it does a big U-shaped IEM set, which is boosting this and boosting this. So again, FiiO did a really, really nice job on tuning. It is something different. It's done in a dynamic driver that's actually quite capable. So all of these things, there's just a lot of things that I liked about this set, and that just happens to be one of them. Then FD15, it really hits on stage. It does hit the good width, the good height, good depth. I think the depth is kind of what you would expect. All these things, when you think about the parts of the tuning that I just talked about and all the parts that they hit and their decisions, all of this kind of lines up. It was going to be a good staging set. You don't have to really listen to it. You can kind of look at the graph and think about their tuning choices and like, yeah, that was going to stage well. No doubt about that. And it does in here. So yeah, very, very nice set, kind of surprisingly good set. So I do want to thank Apos again for letting me borrow it. And that is what I got on FD15. So I will see you guys next time.